This happened last month. I was 35, stationed in a small coastal town for a research project. I'm not saying I'm a veteran in this field, but I've spent my fair share of time underwater, chasing the mysteries of the ocean. It was an ordinary day, or at least I thought it was. I dove into the water like I always do, hoping for the best in the deep blue. I've never stopped thinking about what I found. As I swam, I noticed something glinting in the silted depths. At first, I dismissed it as a lost fishing lure or maybe a piece of junk. But I dove closer. It was metal, twisted and entangled in the coral. Not just one, but several. They were unlike anything I'd seen. I felt a chill run down my spine. I rushed back to report my findings, expecting excitement, expecting support. Instead, I was met with silence from the military. They just didn't respond. I thought they do want to know, right? Days turned into weeks. The townsfolk were friendly, but I felt them pull away. Maybe they knew something I didn't tee. I started having these dreams. I was back in the ocean, but it was darker, colder. There were shapes moving beneath me, things I could almost see but could never quite make out. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the stress of a job. During my dives, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I could swear I saw figures lurking where the light could barely reach. My heart raced. I felt cold. I could hear the water moving, the distant echo of something I couldn't name. I tried to focus on my research, but it was getting harder and harder. My colleagues, once eager to collaborate, started acting distant. I asked them what was wrong. They just shrugged or gave me strange looks. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I went out one last time, determined to get to the bottom of this. The water was darker than usual, almost black. I descended further than I ever had before. I felt pressure around me, but it was more than just physical. Something was calling me. Maybe it was the artifacts, or maybe it was something else entirely. I reached out to touch one of the metallic shapes, but a sudden current moved through the water, knocking me off balance. I heard a voice. A whisper? I couldn't understand it. I swam up, my heart pounding, gasping for air. Then, when I reached the surface, I saw them. Figures in the water, their shapes flickering in the waves. My blood ran cold. I shouted, but the words wouldn't come. It was then I realized some secrets of the ocean were never meant to be uncovered. Why didn't anyone warn me? What are these artifacts? Why was the military hiding them? And then I understood it wasn't just about me anymore. I felt the darkness closing in, and for a moment, I thought I saw something reach for me from below. What secret were they trying to keep from me? And who were those figures really? I still don't know. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart still raced from the images of the night before. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I needed answers, but every person I approached just dodged my questions. It was like they were part of an unspoken pact to keep me out of the loop. I decided to go back to the dive site. I had to see those artifacts again. Maybe there was something I missed. The thought made me uneasy, but the pull was too strong. I gathered my gear and drove down to the dock. The town was quiet, eerily so. It felt as if the air itself was holding its breath. As I descended into the water, the familiar chill enveloped me. My heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears, and the surface light began to fade. I focused on where I'd found the glinting objects. The current was stronger today, pushing me as I swam. I felt I was being drawn into the depths, deeper than I'd intended. When I finally reached the spot, I was shocked. The coral was still the same, but the metal wasn't there. It was gone. Panic set in. I scoured the area, hoping I'd just missed them in the murkiness. Then from the corner of my eye, I noticed a shadow moving farther down. I kicked harder, feeling compelled to follow. As I neared, the shadow became clearer. It was a large object, similar in shape to what I had found before, but much larger, and it was partially buried. With every kick, the water felt thicker, more oppressive. Was this the source of that feeling of being watched? The shadow turned, and I froze. A figure materialized in the darkness. It had no distinct features, but was undeniably humanoid. I didn't understand how it was there. It was an underwater illusion, surely. But then it began to move toward me, arms outstretched as if beckoning me closer. Fear exploded in my chest as I turned to swim back up. I didn't care if I looked foolish. I just needed to get to the surface. But the water surged around me. It was as if those unseen currents were determined to keep me down. I fought against them, desperately breaking into a frantic swim, gasping for air. When I finally emerged, I struggled to catch my breath, heart pounding. I glanced back into the water, expecting the figure to be gone. Instead, the surface shimmered, and I thought I could see faint shapes dancing just beneath. My mind raced. The whispers? They were real. Was it the same thing that had haunted me in my dreams? The moment shattered when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited me, only to find it was one of my colleagues, wholly unexpected. Their face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe," they whispered urgently, glancing at the water. Their warning sent a chill through me. I needed to know what they knew, but as I opened my mouth to ask, the very air felt charged, heavy with unspoken truths. "Then tell me what's going on," I demanded. But before I could finish, a loud noise broke the surface, a deep reverberation that made the water ripple violently. Everything around us trembled, and I realized whatever lay beneath wasn't hiding anymore. As my colleague turned pale and speechless, I knew the darkness was rising again. I struggled to regain my composure as the water around us continued to ripple ominously. The booming sound faded into an echo, but a heavy tension filled the air. My colleague Dan looked panicked. "We have to get out of here," he urged, scanning the surface as if waiting for something to break through. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I pressed, forcing the words out despite my growing unease. But Dan shook his head, his eyes darting back to the darkness below. "You don't understand. They don't want us here. Not after what happened." "What happened?" I insisted, my heart racing again. It felt like the water was closing in on me, each second deeper and bearable. He hesitated, then, steeling himself, he said, "Last month, we found something out here. Artifacts that aren't supposed to exist. The military got involved and shut it down. We were told to stay away." A cold dread seeped into my bones. The shadows and the water, the whispers, they all connected somehow. "And you didn't think to tell me this?" I asked incredulously. Dan glanced nervously at the waves. "It was my place. I thought it was just rumors." I opened my mouth to argue, but the water erupted again, sending frothy splashes around us. A darker shape swirled beneath the surface, pulsing slowly like a living thing. Panic surged through me. "We need to go. Now." Before I could kick back toward shore, Dan was already swimming away. His panic propelled him faster, but I didn't care. I had to see what was there. I looked over my shoulder one last time, heart pounding in my throat. That shape, what was it? That was when I saw it. A flash of silver just below the surface, glinting ominously as it moved. It wasn't the smoothness of metal I'd found before. This was something larger, something ancient. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a shipwreck? A vehicle? I couldn't pull my gaze away. Then, the figure appeared again, more defined now. Still humanoid but distorted, features shifting as if made of water itself, reaching out. It seemed to call to me, luring me. "Were you?" I whispered to the water. With every fiber of my being, I knew I shouldn't approach, but my curiosity was like a current pulling me in. I took a step forward, my feet sinking into the sand, but Dan's frantic voice broke through the tunnel of my focus. "Don't. It's not worth it." Time slipped as I wavered. Then a violent surge in the water erupted, sending both of us tumbling back. I lost my breath, panic clawing at my throat. When I surfaced, the dark shape was gone, replaced by a calm sea. Just moments ago, it felt like a portal to another world had opened and then slammed shut. Dan was beside me, dragging me away from a spot. "We have to leave. This isn't just a dive site anymore." As we swam, I caught my breath and glanced back at the water one last time. I needed to know what lurked below. I needed answers before whatever came to find me. Then, I heard it again, faint at first, but unmistakably there a whisper rising from the depths. Chapter 2. The shoreline grew closer with every stroke, but my heart raced in conflict. My instinct screamed at me to escape, yet something deep within me wanted to dive back into the uncertainty. As we reached the beach, Dan pulled me onto the sand, coughing up salt water and gasping for air. "Are you okay?" he asked, eyes wide, scanning the water for any sign of movement. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, though my voice betrayed me. It came out shaky and uncertain. "What was that?" Dan shook his head. "I don't know, but I don't want to find out." We lay there for a moment, breathing heavily while the waves lapped at the shore, but the calm wasn't reassuring. I was still haunted by the glint of that silver figure beneath the surface. "Did you see it?" I asked, unable to shake the memory. "What do you think it was?" "I don't want to think about it," he said flatly. "All we need to know is that the military is involved. We are well out of their territory, but they found something." I pressed. "What did they find? What do they know?" "I don't know." Dan snapped, clearly on edge. "Maybe we should just call it a day and go home." Home. The word tugged at my mind. The normalcy of it felt far away now. I glanced out at the water again, my pulse quickening. All I could think about was that silent figure beneath the waves. "I can't just forget about it," I murmured. Dan turned to me, frustration pooling in his eyes. "Are you serious?" "Look, whatever it is, it's not worth risking our lives for. I've heard stories about the military shutting people up. They wouldn't take kindly to us snooping around." I pushed myself up onto my elbows and looked at him squarely. "So we just let it go?" We walked away from something that could change everything. His expression softened for a moment. "What if it changes us and not for the better?" I didn't respond, but a flicker of doubt spread through me. Thoughts darted in my mind like fish in the water. What was the military hiding? Why did they want to keep this a secret? We got to our feet, shaking sand off our clothes, and I stood there, caught between curiosity and fear. Just when I decided to head back to my car, a loud, rustling noise erupted from the dense trees behind us. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing again. "Den nodet nervously." It sounded like something or someone. With each step I took back toward the woods, adrenaline shot through me. The whispers from the water hadn't just faded. They felt like a challenge now. The haunting echo of my curiosity tugged me back. That was when I saw it. A glimmering object nestled among the leaves. My breath quickened as I approached. What if it was a piece of whatever the military was hiding? As I leaned closer, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I quickly pulled it out. There were missed calls from the lab, followed by a text. "We need you back." "It's urgent." The urgency in their words sent a shiver down my spine. And then I realized whatever I had uncovered wouldn't stay buried for long. Chapter 3. I stare at my phone, the screen lighting up my face with an eerie glow. The text felt like a lifeline, but it also complicated everything. I shot a glance at Dan. His eyes were wide, darting between the woods and the beach. "What should we do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, weighing my options. I could leave, head back to the lab, pretend none of this had happened. But the thought of going back empty-handed filled me with dread. "We need to check it out," I said finally, stepping closer to the shimmering object. "Are you serious?" Dan looked horrified. "We're already in over our heads, and now you want to dig deeper?" "It might be important," I urged, my curiosity gnawing at logic. "If the military found something and they're hiding it, we have to know what it is." He sighed, looking back at the water as if it might reveal its secrets. "Fine, but if we do this, we do it together. No acting recklessly." With a nod, I reached down, brushing aside leaves and twigs. As the sunlight flickered through the trees, the object became more defined, a small, metallic disc that reflected the light unnaturally. I could see strange symbols etched along its surface. "What the hell?" "Den breathed ingin closer." I felt a rush of excitement and fear. This is it. This might be what the military found. I carefully lifted it from the ground, feeling its weight in my palm. As I examined it, my phone buzzed again. I barely had time to glance at it before Dan grabbed my arm. "Look." The rustling from earlier had intensified. It was closer now, and I could hear low whispers, almost like voices carried by the wind. A chill crept down my spine. "Let us get out of here," I urged, slipping the disc into my pocket. But Dan shook his head, eyes focused behind me. "Not yet. Someone's out there." Before I could respond, a shadow moved through the thicket. My heart raced as fear gripped me. I squinted into the low light, trying to make out the figure. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. Frantic, I pulled Dan back and we cautiously retreated. My instincts took over, pushing me to run toward the beach. But before we could get far, a tall figure emerged from the tree's military gear, dark uniform, face obscured by a mask. "Stop!" he barked, walking toward us with threatening stride. Dan and I exchanged panicked glances. The urgent text from the lab echoed in my mind, and now the urgency felt more real than ever. "Go!" Dan shouted, shoving me back toward the beach. I stumbled, my heart in my throat. We weren't safe yet. As I looked back, the soldier had reached for something at his side. My heart raced as I sprinted, sand kicking up behind me, breath coming in short gasps. The soldier's voice rang out, commanding and sharp. "You're not supposed to be here." The chase fueled the question racing through my mind. What had we stumbled into? The military clearly wanted to keep something hidden. As we reached the water's edge, I glanced around for a way forward. "We have to swim," I shouted, though fear sliced through me. "Are you crazy?" Dan yelled back, eyes wide. What choice do we have?" I interrupted, the thoughts of the glimmering object and the soldier's pursuit merging into pure instinct. Before he could respond, I plunged into the icy water, heart pounding, adrenaline surging, knowing we had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. And I had no idea what was waiting beneath the surface now. Chapter 4: The cold water engulfed me, dragging me down. Panic surged as I gasped, the shock stealing my breath. I struggled to regain my footing, feeling Dan's presence beside me in the dark depths. "Swim!" I screamed, urgency driving my words. We kicked hard, fighting against the waves, our bodies instinctively drawn away from the shore. The chilling water was a stark contrast to the heat that buzzed in my veins. Behind us, I heard the sound of splashing. The soldier was in the water, too. My heart dropped. I didn't dare look back. Fear gripped my throat like a vice. We couldn't let him catch us. "Make for that rock," Dan shouted, pointing to a jagged outcrop jutting from the water. I nodded, and we changed direction, arms slicing through the waves with desperate force. As we reached the rocky formation, I felt fatigue creeping in. My legs were heavy, but we scrambled onto the surface, gasping for breath. I looked back just in time to see the soldier emerge from the water cascading off his uniform. He scanned the area, and my heart raced as I realized he had a radio. "This is Bravo Team. I have visual. Engage the subjects at the shore." He barked into the device. "They'll converge on us," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to move." Dan nodded, eyes wild with fear. We scrambled to the base of the rock and glanced down into the water. In the shadowy depths, I saw something faint aglow beneath the surface. My curiosity flared again, stronger than before. "Look," I pointed out the glow to Dan. He squinted, and his expression shifted from fear to intrigue. "Could it be more of what we found?" he asked, glancing back at the soldier who had started wading towards us. "We can't just sit here," I said, adrenaline propelling my actions. I took a deep breath and plunged back into the water, determined to explore whatever was below. Dan hesitated on the rocky edge. "Wait, we need a plan," he called out, but I was already below the surface. The world above faded to a distant noise. As I descended, the glow intensified. My heart pounded, not just from exertion, but from anticipation. I reached out, fingers brushing against a smooth, metallic surface. That's when I realized it wasn't just one object, but a cluster of them, strangely illuminated, each inscribed with the same symbols as the disc in my pocket. I felt a thrill rush through me. But just as I was about to pull one closer, I heard a gurgled shout from above. There! The soldier had spotted me, and I could sense his urgency rippling through the water. I kicked hard, rushing back up toward the surface. The panic returned, squeezed the air from my lungs as I broke the surface with a splash, gasping for breath. "Dan!" I shouted, spotting him still on the rocks, hesitation shadowing his face. We have to go. But before I could reach him, I saw another figure appear at the water's edge, another soldier. The realization hit hard. We were cornered, trapped between the water and a new threat standing in front of us. My mind raced as I tried to figure out our next move, knowing we had just stumbled deeper into something far more dangerous than I anticipated. Chapter 5. I clung to the rock, my breath shaky, while the cold water swirled around me. The soldier's eyes narrowed as he pointed my way, the radio still crackling with orders. I glanced at Dan, who was clearly conflicted, torn between following my lead or staying put. Did you hear that? I urged him, desperation clawing at my throat. We need to get rid of them. But he hesitated, as if weighing our options. Then I saw the soldier wade further, his boots splashing against the surface. It was a small advance, but it felt monumental in the thick haze of impending doom. Are you really going to wait for him to grab you? I shouted. Dan took a steadying breath. Okay, Fina. What now? I scanned the water's surface, where the glow had faded, but I could still feel its pull. What if we distract him? I can dive again. If I can grab one of those objects, maybe we can use it against them. Are you out of your mind? Dan exclaimed, glancing nervously at the soldier moving closer. I fixed my gaze ahead, determined. We can't just sit here and wait to be caught. In the water, I could almost hear the harmony of the glowing objects calling to me. Okay, I'll go again. I plunged beneath the surface, forcing my limbs to obey. Each kick was harder than the last, but I fought through the fatigue. Somehow, it felt like I wasn't just swimming, like I was being drawn towards something bigger than this moment. As I reached the cluster of objects, the water resisted my movements. My fingers brushed against the hard surface, and I grasped it firmly. It was heavier than I expected, but I kicked hard to resurface. The glow was faint, but it pulsed like a heartbeat in the water. I blinked against the bubbles escaping my mouth. When I broke the surface, I gasped. The soldier was closer now, his figure looming menacingly, but I hoisted the object above the water, unsure of its potential as a weapon. Dan, I've got it. Dan's eyes widened with surprise, but before he could react, the soldier shouted an order, and another wave of soldiers burst from the tree line on the shore. Fall back! Fall back! They yelled, running along the beach and heading straight for us. Panic clutched at me again. This isn't going to work, I shouted at Dan. We need to get away. The soldier was pulling something from his belt, a knife. I couldn't tell, but the glint of metal sent a jolt through me. Now, I yelled, but Dan was still frozen at the rock. Then the distant sounds of sirens began to wail, echoing in the thick, salty air. The boats! I screamed, realizing something. We can escape in the boats. I tugged at Dan's shirt, yanking him off the rock, the glowing object still clutched in my fist. We have to swim. Just as I propelled us forward, I felt a sudden pull from the depths behind me. The objects below started glowing more intensely, as if reacting to the chaos. Something was happening, and it felt terrifyingly powerful. We kicked hard, racing toward the shore, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was beneath us was waking up. The water bubbled with energy, and I had a sickening feeling we were about to ignite something none of us were prepared for. Chapter 6. The surge of urgency pushed me forward. I could hear the soldiers behind us, their shouts blending with the wailing sirens. I kept my eyes focused on the shore, but the water around us churned like it had a mind of its own. I had never been so aware of the power beneath the surface. Dan, keep swimming. I gasped, feeling the weight of the object in my hand. It was a burden and a lifeline all at once. He paddled harder next to me, but I could tell he was still shaken, unsure what to do. As we neared the shore, I spotted a boat bobbing on the water, close enough to reach. There! We can make it to that boat. I pointed, pushing myself to swim faster. My arms screamed in protest, but I willed them to move. Then a sudden jolt pulled at my legs. At first, I thought it was just the current, but the sensation intensified. My heart raced as I turned to see a dark mass below us. It shimmered slightly, like the glowing objects, but there were many more. They writhed, and I had a feeling they wanted something from us. What is that? Dan yelled, glancing back, panic sifting into his voice. I don't know. Just keep moving. I snapped. I kicked harder, but the pull seemed stronger now, more insistent. The glowing object I held felt alive in my grasp, almost vibrating. Everyone in the water. Get them. A soldier shouted behind us. I could hear the crunch of their footsteps on the sand, quickly approaching. Suddenly, the water erupted around us as something shot up toward the surface, sending sprays of water in every direction. I gasped and tried to swim higher, terrified I might be pulled under. It was an enormous, shadowy figure, the source of the glow coming from below. I yelled, swim. Now. I could barely think above the frantic pounding in my chest, but instinct kicked in. Whatever this thing was, it wouldn't stop. Just as we got close to the boat, the shadow broke the surface fully, tentacled and massive. The things beneath us were coming alive. They were not just simple objects, but part of something much more complex. My mind raced as memories of legends surfaced. Tales of creatures long thought to be myths were now roaring to life before our eyes. It felt like time slowed. I glanced at Dan, and his expression mirrored my horror. Then the tentacle shot towards us, moving with unnatural speed. Panic ignited in me, and I turned, pulling Dan faster toward the boat. We grabbed the side, struggling to lift ourselves on board. But just as I thought we were safe, I felt the brush of a cold, smooth tentacle wrapping around my leg. My stomach dropped. Help! Please! I shouted, wrestling against the slimy grip. Dan reached for me. Let go! He yelled, but I felt the icy tendril yank me back. I could only hope that whatever I had brought up from the depths would help us now. I lifted the glowing object high, hoping its light would stave off whatever darkness was descending upon us. But then everything went dark. Chapter 7. I woke up gasping, the taste of salt water still clinging to my lips. My body jerked as I tried to sit up, but I was met with resistance. I was lying on the deck of the boat, bound by thick ropes. Panic surged through me as I struggled, but the effort only made things worse. Done? I shouted, scanning the dimly lit space. The air was thick and charged, like a storm was rolling in. I couldn't see him, but the sound of muffled voices drifted toward me, echoing from somewhere below deck. Trying to get my bearings, I focused on the glowing object I still clutched in my hand. Thank goodness I had managed to hold on to it. Its light pulsed softly, casting eerie shadows around me, but it felt reassuring. Whatever had grabbed me wasn't here now, and I had to find Dan. Suddenly, a massive shadow passed overhead. I glanced up. The silhouette of the creature loomed at the edge of the boat, peering over. My heart dropped again. It seemed to pause, as if assessing whether to dive back into the water or make its presence known above. I couldn't let it intimidate me. I had to assess my surroundings. The boat was a small fishing vessel, riddled with crates and nets. I could hear the soldiers now, their voices growing louder. Something about orders and containment. They didn't seem aware of how close danger was that I tested the ropes binding my arms. They were tight, but not unyielding. I twisted and pulled, desperate to break free. The glowing object shone brighter with my adrenaline. The creature at the edge of the boat recoiled slightly, revealing an eye huge, dark, and unblinking. Just then, I heard footsteps on the deck. I held my breath, instinctively hunching down as I waited for someone to show their face. It felt like an eternity, and then a soldier appeared. His eyes widened in shock at the sight of me. Hey, you're awake, he shouted, reaching for his weapon. Wait, where's Dan? What are you doing? I demanded, struggling against my bindings. He hesitated, dropping his weapon slightly. We need to get out of here. The thing is coming back. Then we have to find my friend. I yelled, anger bubbling up in me. He was with me. As I shouted, the shadows flickered, and I realized the creature had returned. It was coming for the boat, each slap of its massive body sending waves crashing against the hull. The soldier's eyes widened with realization, and he dashed back, scrambling toward the edge to sea. Stay back, he yelled, panic now evident in his voice. That S when I saw it, not just the creature, but something moving behind it. Dark shapes emerged from the depths, gliding toward the boat. They were smaller than the behemoth, but moved with eerie synchrony. My blood ran cold. I gritted my teeth, channeling every ounce of strength. "Cut me free," I shouted to the soldier, but he didn't hear. He was too busy staring into the abyss. With a swift motion, I lifted the glowing object in my grip. Its light intensified, illuminating the dark water, and the dark shapes paused, teetering at the edge of the light. I sensed fear rippling through the soldier, but then something shifted in the depths. I could almost hear it, a voice. It called out, a low, resonating sound that sent chills through my body. The glowing object pulsed in response, as if answering back. I felt compelled to lean closer, to listen. "What do you want?" I whispered to the shadows. Before I could react, everything spun. The creature roared, and suddenly, a tentacle shot above the boat, striking it with terrifying force. The soldier screamed as the deck buckled beneath us that I closed my eyes, bracing for impact, and then I remembered Dan. I had to find him before it was too late. Chapter 8. When I opened my eyes again, I was still on the boat, but the world had shifted into chaos. The soldier lay sprawled on the deck, a dazed expression in his eyes, while the heavy thumping of the creature's body against the hull reverberated through my bones. I felt the deck lurch beneath me. Something was breaking. "Dan!" I shouted, the panic spiraling in my chest. I struggled against the ropes, every muscle straining. The glowing object flickered weakly in my grip, its light feeling like a fragile flame against the dark tide that surrounded us. "I need to find him." I kicked at the ropes, tying my wrists, desperate for freedom. The creature's gargantuan form rose above the water again, and the sight of that massive tentacle unfurling sent fresh adrenaline coursing through me. Then, with a thunderous crash, the creature struck again, and the boat swayed perilously. Without thinking, I plunged into the water, yanking hard at the restraints as I did. The cold engulfed me, and I felt the rush of the ocean swirl around, thick with urgency. Just as I sank below the surface, I caught a glimpse of Dan clinging to the remnants of the boat. "Dan!" I yelled, bubbles escaping my mouth. I kicked harder toward him, my legs propelling me forward as the light from the glowing object in my hand pulsed once more with urgency. It glowed brighter beneath the water, as if aware of the danger we were in. I made it to Dan, who seemed to be recovering from his own panic. I could see the ropes bound around his ankles, and, even in the dim light, he looked relieved to see me. "You're okay," he exclaimed, struggling against his bindings. "But we have to get back up." "Hold on," I replied, focusing on our escape. Reaching out, I touched the glowing object to his restraints, a flash of hope sparking within me. The moment the light made contact, something extraordinary happened. The ropes began to dissolve, as if the light was dissolving them too. He kicked free, and together we swam upward, but the pressure of the water above felt unyielding. The surface seemed to beckon us, but I glanced back toward the dark depths, where shadows stirred ominously. We broke the surface all at once, gasping for air, and frantically scanned for the boat. But it was gone. Our vessel had splintered under the weight of that creature. I could only see floating debris, bobbing around as the water around us churned. "What are we going to do?" Dan yelled, his eyes darting, searching for any sign of safety. The roiling water around us felt alive, and it was becoming harder to distinguish between threat and ocean. "Look," I pointed, my heart racing. The faint glow from the object clutched in my hand pulsed rhythmically, guiding us away from the chaos toward the shoreline. "We have to swim to the beach. Are you sure that thing won't follow us?" he asked, wild-eyed. "We don't have a choice," I replied firmly, already kicking toward the distant shore. With every stroke, I felt the being's presence lurking beneath us, the weight of its gaze, each tentacle slashing through the water, seemed to leave an imprint on my mind. We swam as fast as our limbs would carry us, the shoreline drawing nearer, but still too far. Just as the darkness began closing in around us, another massive form surged upward, causing the water to explode around us. I felt a tentacle graze my leg, cold and forceful. I screamed and kicked harder, beating against the creature. "Swim!" I shouted to Dan, urging him to push forward as I felt the pull of the giant tentacles attempting to ensnare us. I gritted my teeth, heart racing, and with one desperate, frantic stroke, I flailed toward the lighted shore. As we emerged from the water onto the sandy beach, we collapsed into the dirt. The glowing object flickered and dimmed, slowly settling into an unnatural stillness. I turned my head back to the waves and watched in shock as the monstrous form of the creature flailed in the surf, a massive silhouette framed by the fading light. "What was that?" Dan gasped, breathless, a look of disbelief etched across his face. "I don't know, but it wanted something," I replied, struggling to catch my breath. The heavy silence washed over us, broken only by the soft lapping of the waves against the shoreline. The whispers returned, swirling through my mind, lingering like an echo of secrets untold. But it was no longer just fear or curiosity. It felt like an invitation, a call to explore the unknown. "Should we go back?" Dan asked, glancing at the water, uncertainty looming in his eyes. I thought about all the questions still left unanswered: the military, the mysteries of the ocean, the ancient artifacts, but another part of me just wanted to walk away. We had escaped, and for now, that was enough. "I don't know," I said finally, gazing out at the now calm sea, the shadows below hidden once more. But whatever it was, it's still down there, waiting. As I stood up, brushing sand from my skin, I felt the weight of the adventure settle on my shoulders. I might never know what lay beneath, but part of me knew this wouldn't be the end. A deeper revelation stilled my racing heart. Some secrets were meant to remain elusive. That I looked at Dan, determination aligning in our gazes. Whatever lingered under the ocean's surface would have to wait another day. I stepped away from the waves, leaving the questions for tomorrow, but always aware that the darkness below could someday rise again.